Podche production.
The following podcast deals with sexual exploitation and violence against children. Listener discretion is advised. This is also an ongoing investigation. So if you have information, please contact Crime Stoppers on 1-800-333-000 or get in touch with me at adamshandwriter@gmail.com. It was a shocking crime spree against children that shook Melbourne to the core.
Detectives said the man, armed with a pistol and wearing a dark-coloured balaclava, was intent on capturing the child.
We're dealing with a very cunning person, a person who we regard as very dangerous.
The man carried a handgun and a 35-centimetre long kitchen knife with a black plastic handle and serrated blade.
Over 6 years, from 1985 to 1991, there was a series of break-ins at family homes in the dead of night. However, the goal was not property, but the young girls who lived within. Some were sexually assaulted with their parents and siblings bound and gagged in nearby rooms. Others were abducted and carried off, terrified, into the night, and then released hours later after being sexually assaulted.
Some describe him as a monster, and I think that's probably accurate.
One victim, 13-year-old Carmen Chan, never came home alive. Her remains were discovered a year later.
In an open letter, the Chan family pleaded with the abductor to release Carmen, addressed to Dear Mr. Kind, not Mr. Cruel.
The offender, dubbed Mr. Cruel, cast a long shadow over Melbourne and changed how families lived their lives. The fear struck at the peace and security that people took for granted in the genteel suburbs of the southern capital. No one's children were safe. He was portrayed as a master criminal who left no trace for forensic investigators to follow. My name is Adam Shand. I'm an investigative journalist and crime author, and I've been working on this case for 7 years.
Today, it's a sprawling, busy city of 3 million people. It's Australia's rapidly growing financial capital. While attracting residents from all over the globe, it has developed a modern, vibrant, and surprisingly cosmopolitan flavour.
I first moved to Melbourne from Sydney in 1989, in the middle of the Mr. Cruel panic. Until then, Melbourne had been a quiet and civilised alternative. A place where parents felt it was safe to leave their children at home for an evening out, with older kids entrusted with minding the younger ones. In 1976, that confidence had been shaken when 8-year-old Eloise Warledge had been taken from her family's home in the Bayside suburb of Beaumaris, never to be seen again. But life returned to normal quickly, until 1985, when, with sickening frequency, young girls were being taken again.
10-year-old Sharon Wills was reunited with her family early Wednesday morning after a horrifying ordeal.
Nikki's abductor, going on voice, is believed to be aged between 20 and 40.
She's listening to this as well. We're all there waiting to see her again, and can't wait to have her back with us.
For this podcast, I've reviewed every piece of evidence in the police investigation. Much of it has never been revealed to the public before. I'm taking you inside the hunt for Mr. Cruel as it happened. I'm drawing on information from inside the task force set up to pursue Mr. Cruel and following the chronology of the investigation from 1991. It's important to remember that the Mr. Cruel profile was only created after police compiled a dossier of 10 cases and tried to prove they were linked. I'll be testing that methodology to understand why the investigation failed.
It's one of those cases that just hasn't got off the ground. It's that simple. And the thing about it is there's still more investigations to do. It's not too late. There's still aspects of that inquiry that should be looked at.
It's the story of 30 detectives who worked tirelessly for 3 years, trying to link the abductions to one unknown man, to create a profile of an individual who probably never existed. This was a classic case of tunnel vision that led to failure. which left a series of child rapes and one murder unsolved to this day.
We've always got in the back of the mind that this person may strike again, and that's a constant burden, and it's extremely disappointing that we haven't solved it at this stage.
From 1991, no more children were abducted using the Mr. Cruel methodology, leaving police grasping at thin air. The Mr. Cruel avatar, created in the uproar after Carmen Chan's murder, vanished just as mysteriously as he had appeared.
Most of us know who's going to knock on our door. That knock knock one day might be us.
35 years after the crime wave abruptly ended, police have a mountain of data but little hard evidence. Nothing that could lead them to one offender. In fact, the evidence points to multiple offenders being involved. Detectives conducted 27,000 interviews in an effort to match a suspect to their profile. Arrests were made for other crimes, but this did not lead police to Mr. Cruel.
There were several arrests made throughout that task force of men committing pedophile offences there. I'm not sure whether, certainly from the investigation of what we're looking for, because we had specific descriptions, we had specific, as I said, voice and speech pattern characteristics that we're looking at.
For the first time in this podcast, a survivor of this terrifying crime spree will tell her story. We'll call her Anthia to protect her identity.
I didn't see his face. All I saw was as he leapt out at me through the hallway door, and he had a balaclava, one of those really scary ones with the eye holes in the mouth hole.
Anthia's story casts serious doubt over the key assumptions of this investigation, that one man was behind these crimes. Her story raises the possibility that there were multiple offenders who were not connected that perpetrated these abductions. Anthia believes the obsession of police in trying to connect the crimes to one man allowed her assailant to go free.
How many years ago is it? Kind of 35, 36 something years ago. So I guess he could still be young enough to be still offending, in which case, yes, definitely, I would be keen to see him brought to justice.
I'll explore how Victoria Police and the media created the profile of the man they were chasing, and how that profile collapsed in the face of the scientific evidence that's been kept secret for 3 decades. In August 1991, police went back to the beginning of the Mr. Cruel era. They looked at 10 unsolved sexual assaults on girls, women, and one teenage boy between 1985 and 1991. Mostly committed in the leafy eastern suburbs of Melbourne. The attacks seem to have links and connections in their modus operandi. They often involved home invasion and abduction, followed by rape and then release. But in 1991, something changed. On April 13th, Carmen Chan was abducted from her home and hope was fading for the teenager. By August, police had come to the view that Mr. Cruel would kill to protect his identity. The fear of incarceration was enough to drive him to murder, even though his motivation had been sexual. The seed of this theory came from a case 6 years earlier. On February 20, 1985, a 14-year-old girl in Hampton, a bayside suburb of Melbourne, was abducted from her home, sexually assaulted, and then returned to her family. She's agreed to be interviewed for this podcast on the condition we protect her identity. I'll call her Anthia. After Carmen's abduction, police went back to Anthia to review her evidence from 7 years earlier. She was now at university and met 2 detectives in a car at the campus. She was happy to assist. She wasn't satisfied with the interview she gave the morning after the attack in 1985.
It was a policewoman who I was giving a statement to, and I remember her sort of prodding me for more detail. And then I remember, and obviously I didn't really want to give it, but then I remember reading it afterwards and just thinking, oh God, It was factually correct. It was what I'd said, but it was not she paraphrased it. She put it kind of in her own words, and I remember just being like embarrassed. Even at 14, I thought, God, who's going to be reading this? It just makes me sound like an idiot.
In August 1991, police told Anthia they believed her attacker and the kidnapper of Carmen Chan were the same person. Anthia was sceptical.
I was surprised. I didn't understand why they thought there was a link, because from all that I'd seen or read in the papers, it didn't sort of strike me as that similar.
Detectives spoke to Anthia for 2 hours. She repeated what she'd said back in 1985. One line that her attacker had uttered caught the attention of the police in particular.
The phrase that he used to me, which was, my freedom's more important to me than your life, was what they were basing their theory on, that was why he'd killed Carmen Chan. So yeah, I did. I got more than the feeling that they were trying to link them. I got they basically said that they were linking them. They said he used certain words, certain phrases to Carmen Chan, and I thought that doesn't really sound like the same guy necessarily. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought they were basing it on a pretty flimsy kind of premise.
To Anthia, it seemed the detectives were drawing a very long bow between her case and Carmen Chan's. However, the cops were insistent about the link. Anthia conceded there were similarities, but too few to convince her. It seemed to her the police were working backwards from a theory rather than following evidence. What police didn't tell Anthia was they had DNA material from her attacker. Identifying offenders from DNA was still in its infancy, but the sample was the ace in the hole for the investigation. This was because they also had DNA from another abduction case 3 years later, which most police believed was committed by the same offender who abducted Carmen Chan. For now, the links were circumstantial and related to modus operandi. Just as the police did back in 1991, I'm going to compare the first and last cases in the Mr. Cruel narrative, Anthia's abduction and Carmen Chan's. At 9 p.m. on Saturday, April 13, 1991, Carmen Chan was with her 2 younger sisters, 9-year-old Carly and 7-year-old Karen, at the family's residence in Serples Road, Templestowe. 13-year-old Carmen was minding her siblings while their parents, Phyllis and John Chan, worked at their Chinese restaurant in nearby Eltham. John Chan left the house for the restaurant at 6:45 p.m, leaving his daughters home alone. At about 9:15 p.m, they were watching television in Carmen's bedroom. Carmen and Carly decided to get food from the kitchen during a commercial break, leaving Karen behind.
Major Laughs, Major Dad, 6:30 Saturday. Then
Most of the Chan's property was protected by a 2-metre fence and electronic security gates. However, the entrance doors to the home were unlocked. The intruder either didn't know that or he was following a plan. The point of entry was the lounge room window. It was a wind-out style window with internally fitted fly screens. He cut away the screen, pushed it in, and then forced the window winder to gain access. Carmen and Carly were confronted by the man in the corridor outside the bedroom. He was holding a long silver-bladed carving knife. The masked man grabbed the girls forcibly by their hair and forced them back into the bedroom. He discovered Karen, who hid behind the door when she heard strange noises in the corridor.
"Come up here,"
he said, gesturing for Karen to join her sisters.
"I won't hurt you."
Then showed her the knife. He asked the girls if they had any money, and the girls replied they didn't. He asked where their parents were, and they said they were at the restaurant. "You 2 little ones get in the cupboard," he ordered. His target was clearly Carmen. He shut Karen and Carly into the cupboard and pushed a bed against it to keep them at bay. Contrary to many media reports, the 2 younger Chan sisters were not bound and gagged. They heard Carmen and the man leave the room, and then Carmen say, "Don't do that, don't do that." All was silent for about 2 minutes until Karen called out Carmen's name. She didn't reply. The offender returned to the bedroom and asked if the girls were okay. They said yes. That was the last interaction. Apparently, the man took Carmen, who was barefoot and wearing just a nightie, into the darkness. Investigators found the kitchen door ajar, and the police dog followed a scent across the family's tennis court and to a low boundary fence that provided easy access to the street. The track led to a rough driveway into a vacant block of land about 300 metres from the Chan residence. The trail went cold there, but this was a significant lead. The vacant lot was owned by a man who held a number of taxi licences, and the drivers would park their vehicles there and take out a taxi for their shift. Over time, police matched each car that was regularly parked on the lot, all except one, a navy blue Bedford van with distinctive bubble side windows, mag wheels and yellow striping on the side. Finding the van was the highest priority, but it would prove to be a distraction. About 10 minutes after Carmen was taken, the girls forced open the cupboard door and called their father at work. Curiously, John Chan did not tell his wife this shocking news, nor did he immediately telephone the police. Instead, he drove home to look for Carmen and only then raised the alarm with police.
I try my best and I do looking around to try my girl.
3 days after her daughter vanished, Phyllis Chan made an emotional plea on national TV for Carmen's return.
Please, bring my daughter Carmen back to home because all my family love her very much. Carmen, this is your favorite dress. You have to come home and wear it. Come back and dress it. Please, release my daughter. Oh, my family love her. Don't spoil my family, please.
If this was Mr. Cruel, he left a message for the first time. The Chan's work vehicle, a Toyota Celica, was parked at the front of the house. The offender spray-painted on the bonnet and front windscreen the words, "Asian drug deal, payback, more to come, anon." Most police saw this as a red herring, a diversion to throw them off the scent. However, a link to organised crime was also investigated. A crew of detectives carried out background checks on John Chan's finances and his network of associates. Some of his friends raised red flags, which we'll deal with later. Carmen's sisters gave a description of the offender. He was Australian, early 30s, but they weren't sure. A medium build, 168 centimetres to 175 centimetres in height. He was wearing a green or grey tracksuit. He covered his face with a brown balaclava or beanie with eye and mouth holes cut out, and a bobble or pom-pom on the top. This balaclava might have been homemade from a sock or leg warmer and tied at the top. Now let's examine Anthia's abduction in 1985, which police believed was committed by the same man. Anthia's physical description of her attacker in 1985 did seem similar to what Carmen's sisters told police. Her attacker was about 175 centimetres. He was wearing a black balaclava with white stitching around the eyes and mouth. He had a medium build, even a bit weedy, she said. He was aged 25 to 30 years old with an Australian accent. There was nothing distinctive about his voice though. He seemed to have shoulder-length, straggly straight hair. Anthia had been at home alone, sitting in the kitchen watching a movie when the man pounced on her.
I didn't see his face. All I saw was as he leapt out at me through the hallway door, and he had a balaclava. One of those really scary ones with the eye holes in the mouth hole. It still gives me a horrible feeling to think about. But that was the only time I really saw him. I guess because I'm quite a visual person, it makes it all seem like sort of like a dream. Because I just remember, things that he said. Because, it's odd. It's an odd memory. was an odd feeling.
The most distinctive thing about the man was his smell.
I remember the smell of him, which was just a soapy smell.
He pulled Anthia from the stool, gagged her with a towel, and dragged her towards the dining room. He warned that if she tried anything, he'd start throwing punches or he'd cut her throat. He told her not to look at him. His freedom was more important to him than her life. In the dining room, Anthia was made to lie on her stomach and she was hog-tied, hands and feet behind her back. He released the towel from her mouth and Anthia asked him why he was doing this.
The man said to me, he gave a sort of a bogus reason why he was doing what he was doing. He said, "Your father's been having an affair with my wife," which was patently untrue. And I think that they somehow linked that to the KARMEIN Chan case, that there was some bogus reason given, or like a red herring. That's all I can think of.
Police saw a parallel between this red herring in Anthia's case and the graffiti left on the Chan's car. They believed he was consciously laying a false trail to confuse police.
Also, I didn't believe that this guy probably even had a wife. I thought it was just some ridiculous, like he thought that I was so gullible I would believe that. I don't know.
Anthia asked if he was going to hurt her and he said no. "You're not going to rape me, are you?" she asked. "No," he replied. "I'm just going to wait. I want to have a word with your father," he said. She heard him walk out of the dining room and into the kitchen. 5 or 10 minutes passed before he returned. "A change of plan," he said. It was time to go. He'd left a note for Anthia's mother, he said, but no note was ever found. The man took her from the house via the back door and put her in a vehicle, a small car like a Mazda with bucket seats and a manual transmission, she said later. He ordered her to sit on the floor of the front passenger side and put her head on the seat. She was not to move or make a sound, but Anthia did not comply. She had a pillowcase over her head but no gag over her mouth. She was free to ask him questions, and he was happy to answer apparently. There was intermittent conversation between them for the balance of the ordeal. His demeanour was calm, which helped Anthia contain the terror she was feeling.
Yeah, I would say not panicky. Definitely, he was on the calm side. I don't know. It seemed like he kind of knew what he was doing, or like he'd planned quite well. He didn't seem rushed. He didn't seem like he was worried about getting caught. My theory is that our house had been broken into a couple of weeks or a week or so before, and some money had been taken out of my bag, and I think that person broke in just by chance looking for cash and realised that a young girl lived there, and then I think he was watching the house, which would have been easy because it was a big dark yard and big windows, and he would have seen my parents go out that evening, and I think they were going to parent-teacher night at school, and he would have seen me through the big windows sitting there by myself, and I think he probably would have thought, oh, this is my chance.
The man confessed to Anthia he had broken into her home a week before the abduction. He apparently gained access by jamming a window to Anthia's bedroom. He might have seen a birthday card on a bench in her bedroom from her parents. "Happy 14th birthday to our darling daughter," it read. Yet he asked Anthia's name and age when he first confronted her. He said he'd never had a 14-year-old before. He confessed he'd stolen $20 from Anthia. It was a weird break-in, she recalled. The burglar had left the bathroom and kitchen cupboards open. Nothing else but Anthia's money was taken. She asked him whether it was for drugs. He agreed, saying he was into heroin and anything he could get his hands on. He said his drug habit cost him $1,500 a week, and she told him he was crazy. The car backfired once and he said, "Trust me to steal a crappy car." From under the blanket, Anthia asked the man a string of questions as they drove. Did his wife know he was doing this? No, he replied. Had he done anything like this before? No, he said. And how long had he been planning this? Not long, he said. She kept asking where they were going, but he wouldn't tell her. Then a strange pantomime played out. He stopped the car and told Anthia he was going to call her parents. He told her to keep quiet and not do anything silly. When he got back, he told her no one was at home. 10 minutes later, he stopped the car again and repeated the alleged call. Same result. No one home, he said. After an hour of driving around, the man said he was lost. He'd come the wrong way. Anthia asked him to loosen the cord on her wrist. It was hurting her. He promised he would take it off when they arrived at the destination. Another 5 minutes, he said, over and over, as they drove through the darkness. Then he stopped once more to call Anthia's parents for a third time. This time he claimed he'd spoken to her mother. He ordered her not to call the police, but Anthia's mother said it was too late, he said. Fantastic, said Anthia, in a sarcastic tone. What are you going to do now, she asked. We're nearly there, he replied. It was later confirmed there were no phone calls to Anthia's home. Her mother did not speak to the offender. He seemed to be acting out a fantasy in which he could avoid confronting the true motive behind this abduction, which was sex. 5 or 10 minutes later, he stopped the car again and took Anthia out of the vehicle. He led her across an expanse of dirt, one arm around her, the other holding her arm. Her head was still covered with the pillowcase. Anthia was barefoot and the ground felt rough with big lumps of earth. Then she felt grass underfoot and then concrete, followed by more dirt. Sometimes she would hear a car go past and it'd make her stop walking. They climbed over 2 low brick fences about 2 minutes' walk apart. Another 2 minutes they came to a plain wire fence which he held open for her. There was concrete again. She walked up a step and was ordered to sit down on a rug. She asked him to untie her hands and he sawed through the cord with a knife. He asked her to tell him if he cut her. The relief was short-lived. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to tie you up again, he said. He pulled her hands behind her and tied her to a wooden pole that appeared to be sunk into the earth. Just sit there and don't try anything, he ordered. He walked away and Anthia could hear banging and clattering, but couldn't work out what he was doing. He came back 5 minutes later and told her he would replace the pillowcase with a blindfold. When he pulled the blindfold off, Anthia could see she was in a house under construction, a structure of wooden beams but no walls or windows. She couldn't tell if there was a roof. There was a highway about 100 metres away. Then he covered her eyes with a soft material and secured the blindfold with masking tape. The man kept repeating it was important that she couldn't see him. He untied her hands and finally revealed his true intention. You realise I'm going to rape you, don't you? He asked. Anthia started to cry and begged him not to. Don't cry, he said. I'll be gentle. I won't hurt you. When it was over, she heard him getting dressed and ordered her to get dressed. He put the pillowcase back over her head and led her outside, where he tied her arm to what felt like a plastic pipe. The man told her he had moved the car and would have to go get it. He was gone for what seemed like ages, and she thought he might have left. She resolved to count up to 200 before trying to get loose. As she was counting, he returned in the car. They got back into the car and Anthia was gripped by fear. She just kept on asking him whether he was going to kill her. He said he wouldn't, but Anthia did not believe him. After so many lies, she didn't believe anything he said. He kept driving for 45 minutes to an hour. Anthia heard a police siren go past, but not on the same road. It felt like she was being taken even further away. Then the man said he would release her at a telephone box with one hand and both legs tied together. He'd give her 20 cents to make a call home. After 10 minutes, the man said he'd changed his mind. He would now leave her about a quarter of a mile from a police station. He wouldn't tie her up. He would just pull her jumper over her head and leave her. She would count to 1,000 before going to the police station, he said. Soon after this, he stopped the car and the plan changed again, slightly. He would leave her at the back of a bowling alley, he said. This turned out to be the Moorabbin bowling alley on Nepean Highway, directly across the road from a police station. He walked her from a back street over a railway line and to the back of the bowling alley, where he told her to sit on the step. He then pulled her school jumper over her head with her arms still in the sleeves and pulled the pillowcase off her head. The jumper covered her head, but she could partially see through the fabric. She saw him walk away and called after him, "Thanks for a charming evening." He just sort of laughed and replied, "You're welcome." Anthia didn't count to 1,000. She waited just 10 seconds before walking over to the police station. She banged on the door, but nobody answered. It was closed. So she found a local resident who let her call her very relieved father, who in turn called the police.
I remember as I was walking up the steps to my parents' house, one of the police looked at my wrist and there was marks from where he tied me up, and they said, "Oh, it's confirmed she's got ligature marks on her wrist." And so that, to me, that I knew what she meant. They meant, or he meant, she meant, I don't know, that they didn't believe it up until that point, and I just felt like that was a bit tactless, a bit kind of insensitive. Like they could have said it not in my hearing. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, it was just kind of awful and embarrassing. I had to give a statement and kind of go all over it and give all the kind of horrible details and you know, when you're 14, you don't want to talk about things anyway, let alone something really kind of traumatic. Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't that they treated me badly. I guess I felt it was a bit clumsy. What you've said about how they didn't really have a sexual violence unit, that explained it to me. Like they weren't really used to it. Although I don't know why. Like sexual violence is not a new thing.
Anthia's attacker had a number of attributes that matched Mr. Cruel's modus operandi, and some aspects that did not match at all. For instance, Mr. Cruel is credited with a detailed knowledge of forensics, which allowed him to cover his tracks. But in Anthia's case, he made some basic errors. Firstly, he left the length of cord he tied Anthia with, and he hadn't worn gloves at any stage of Anthia's ordeal. And most crucially, he didn't use a condom. After being raped, Anthia needed to go to the toilet, and he told her, "Just go over there." After she relieved herself, the man said, "Good, now you won't get pregnant." Swabs were later taken from Anthia at the hospital. The first rape case to be solved in Victoria through DNA was still 4 years away in 1989. But the samples and the cord were stored for comparison with other offender samples in the future. This would eventually prove crucial to the investigation. In August 1991, police came to Anthia with a theory that her attacker had also abducted Carmen Chan. At that stage, the medical evidence had not been matched to anything collected from the later attacks. The link between Anthia and Carmen Chan was drawn from behavioural analysis of the offenders alone. Anthia was doubtful. Her gut feel was there were two different predators at work. Then, in April 1992, her confidence was shaken. Carmen Chan's remains were found in a shallow grave.
But he did say that to me about my freedom is more important than your life. So I did think there was a chance that he might kill me. And I think that is probably the key to my getting over it. Not getting over it, but, dealing with it, is that I thought, well, something worse could have happened. and it didn't.
Despite this, Anthia has never been convinced that her case was linked to the later abductions. As you'll see in a later episode, she had good reason to believe that. In episode 2 of Creating Mr. Cruel, the FBI comes to the aid of Victoria Police, and a profile of the offender is created. But are they chasing the right man? Some investigators had doubts from the start.
A Podjay production.
The following podcast deals with sexual exploitation and violence against children. Listener discretion is advised. This is also an ongoing investigation, so if you have information, please contact Crime Stoppers on 1800 333 000 or get in touch with me at adamshandwriter@gmail.com. Welcome to episode 2 of Creating Mr. Cruel. I'm your host, Adam Shand. On April 9th, 1992, Constables Gallagher and Farley of Thomastown Police were on the divisional van doing patrol duty in this working-class area in Melbourne's north. An uneventful shift until 5:45 p.m. A message came over the radio. Suspected human remains had been found. They returned to the station and met a local resident who'd been walking his dog along a waterway called the Merry Creek. He had discovered what appeared to be a human skull. Gallagher and Farley took the witness back to the scene, a desolate stretch of landfill between the creek and the Thomastown electricity substation. They drove to a point 40 metres south of a large concrete drain and parked up. They left the vehicle and walked about 20 metres up a small hill and across a freshly graded area of ground. At 6 p.m, in the gathering gloom of sunset, they found the human skull. At 6:06, a superintendent arrived to organise the recovery, and a request was made for full crime scene services to attend. It appeared the grader had disturbed a shallow grave. Only the skull had been located so far. It was going to be a long night that would stretch into days. At 6:49 p.m, even before the police surgeon arrived, a TV news crew set up on the western side of the creek. Soon, the news was all over the media. Carmen Chan had been found.
Squads of police today continue to excavate the shallow grave site in the desolate industrial area. 2 days ago, the skeleton was found in the landfill dump. Now police believe it could be Carmen Chan.
2 days later, homicide boss Detective Chief Inspector Peter Halloran fronted a press conference. They hadn't found the rest of the skeleton yet, but there was little doubt who this was.
Whilst we don't have any positive information at this point in time, as I've said to you, it is quite a possibility that it is in fact Carmen. It's outrageous to think that we've got a young female, probably around the 13 years of age, who's received a number of gunshot wounds to the head. I think that in itself is rather horrific.
It was believed Carmen's remains had been buried for up to a year before, possibly soon after her abduction. The family's hope that Mr. Cruel might return Carmen alive had been in vain from the start. Their loved one, their cheeky, high-spirited daughter, had been executed gangland style. Carmen's godfather, Darryl Kerr, spoke to The Age newspaper.
I can't understand why anyone would shoot a 13-year-old girl like Carmen 3 times in the head. I could understand if this person needed a gun, if he was keeping a big man who was a threat to him. But a 13-year-old girl? It's so pointless and distressing. The whole thing is very hard to believe.
To some in Melbourne's Chinese community, it was too hard to believe. This brutal crime had a familiar element of punishment to it. Perhaps Carmen had not been taken for sexual motives, but as payback for something her father had done. They pointed to the graffiti sprayed on the family car that spelt out, "Asian drug deal, payback." more to come. This was how the ruthless Asian triads did business. Even before Carmen was found, her father John Chan was forced to come out and deny the rumours. It was to be his only public comment.
And the police already checked on me, and if they know I'm clean.
Police did follow up the underworld theory in Carmen's murder. We'll discuss those checks in a later episode of the podcast.
All I can say is, to my knowledge, given the tools that we had at the time, and given the technology that was available at the time, a comprehensive financial background was conducted on the Chans. Now, maybe a more comprehensive investigation could be conducted. I think logic tells you, of course it could. And I don't know if that has been done.
A monster was on the loose. The only certainty was that Mr. Cruel would strike again. All eyes turned to Victoria Police.
So it was a new phenomenon, there's no question about it. And yes, it did create an enormous amount of fear in the community. People going to bed in their houses at night, they've been woken up at gunpoint, just tried up, and their young daughters raped was just something that hadn't been happening all that often in the past. My name is Kelvin Blair. In the 80s and 90s, I worked in a variety of areas in VicPol. The last 5 years of my career, from November 1987 to November 1992, was as Chief Commissioner. The very idea of someone breaking in, tying up parents and having their daughter raped, and the brazenness of the offending, I think, created an enormous amount of fear in the community. And it's okay to say that, well, statistically, the chance of being a victim are, quite small, but that doesn't allay people's fears. It's the perception that becomes the reality. And, of course, we had to respond, and we pulled out all stops. I had a personal interest, particularly in the Carmen Chan case, because Phyllis had a restaurant here in Eltham, and I dined there a number of times. And I dined there after Carmen went missing, and I had a lot of conversations with Phyllis. My view is that the offender took great pains to see that he couldn't be identified. He never exposed his face, as far as I know. And my view is that Carmen must have got a mask off and got a look at him, and he felt that because of that, he had to protect his identity, so she was killed. It was sad on every level, because Phyllis, Carmen's mother, thought that her daughter would still be alive, and it was a forlorn hope. But once it gets past 48 hours, that chance of that really become quite slim. And then, of course, she was found out 3 bullet wounds in the back of the head.
In May 1992, the Spectrum Task Force was created to review all the cases with a possible connection to Mr. Cruel. There were up to 20 sexual assaults on women and children in Melbourne's East from 1995 to 91 that were unsolved. Nearly half were easily eliminated, leaving 10 cases as the basis of the investigation. At first, it was 9 detectives on the task force. Then later, it expanded to 30.
My role was ultimately, if the offender had been identified and located, my crew would have interviewed him and compiled the brief evidence. My name's Chris O'Connor. I retired from Victoria Police in 2013 as a Detective Senior Sergeant, and I was in the police force for 36 years. From 1977 through to 2013. Yeah, I worked on sex crimes for in excess of 23, 24 years.
O'Connor and the other Spectrum members were given a file with 10 cases thought to be linked. These included home invasions, abductions and sexual assaults carried out by masked men. Some were quickly discounted or later solved without a connection to Mr. Cruel. However, when the breadth of the investigation became known, the shadow of Mr. Cruel seemed to loom large over Melbourne.
Carmen Chan was abducted from her home in the Melbourne suburb of Templestowe.
It is thought the body had been dumped in the landfill 12 months ago. 13-year-old Carmen was snatched from her Templestowe home almost a year to the day. Her parents have waited, desperate to know what has happened to their daughter.
In the public imagination, this was a one-man crime wave over 7 years. The reality was something different. At this stage, Mr. Cruel was no more than a collection of files, a crime spree in a box.
To be fair to Victoria Police, this whole concept of 7 years or 8 years, by 1993, it was something that was identified only by Spectrum, and that's why Spectrum was put together to see if there was any nexus between a number of these other series of crimes. Prior to Spectrum, there were perhaps 2, maybe 3 other regional task forces that had been put together to look at a series of regional crimes, which at the end of the day became the basis of investigations for Spectrum, the starting point.
Investigators worked through the 10 cases, methodically comparing them for patterns and similarities. The starting date was February 20th, 1985, the night of Anthia's attack in Hampton that we discussed in episode 1. Her case seemed connected to Carmen Chan's in 1991, particularly the offender's warning to Anthia that his liberty was more important than her life. This seemed to foretell of Carmen's murder. In the space of 15 months after Anthia's attack, there were 5 more sexual assaults that were similar. There seemed to be a pattern in the intervals of time between each offence. 2 months, 5 months, 5 months, 2 months, and 5 months. This series of crimes was happening long before anyone was talking about Mr. Cruel. They were attributed to the so-called Hampton rapist. The details of these cases have never been revealed before. The names of the victims have been changed to protect their identities. The first victim after Anthia, on the 26th of April 1985, was not even a child. She was a 26-year-old bank teller from Hawthorne. A man had broken into her apartment at 2 a.m. and woke the victim. We'll call her Tina. The intruder wasn't wearing a mask. She got a glimpse of his face in the darkness. He told her not to look at his face.
"Don't look at my face."
"I've got a gun and knives too," he said. All she remembered was his hairline, black pants and black skivvy. "You know what I'm here for," he told Tina.
"You know what I'm here for."
He tied her up, as Anthia had been, with a thin plastic cord. He complained about her personal hygiene and made her bathe. He seemed to be a clean freak. If he had a knowledge of police procedures, it was incomplete. It's not clear whether he used a condom, and he did not make Tina wash after raping her. He left her tied up and made his escape. The next attack was on July 3rd, 1985. It was a 14-year-old boy in Hampton. He lived just over a kilometre from Anthia's house. They were unknown to each other. It was 8:25 p.m. Brandon, which is not his real name, had gone to a shop 200 metres from his home to buy milk. On his return, he saw a man about 20 metres away walking towards him. He was about 30 years old, thin to medium build, dressed in runners, blue jeans and a hooded duffel coat. The boy stepped onto the nature strip to allow the man to pass. The man then lunged at Brandon from behind and grabbed him by the shoulders. He demanded Brandon hand over his money. $17 in notes and coins was all he had. But this wasn't over. The man showed him a knife. "It's razor sharp," he said. "Feel it." He covered the boy's head with a beanie or a balaclava and dragged him into a nearby lane where he was forced into a car. Like Anthia, Brandon was made to crouch in the footwell. They drove for 20 to 30 minutes. Brandon was taken to a suburban home that was lined with plastic sheeting. He could hear the man kicking it as he walked around. "They must be renovating," he said. The offender washed Brandon, saying it was important that they be clean. He then raped the teenager without using a condom. He once again washed the boy and drove him to an intersection near Caulfield Police Station, not far from where this ordeal had begun. He gave him directions to the police station. He removed the tape from the boy's eyes and then pulled up his jumper over his head. He told him to hold the jumper there until he counted to 1,000. The offender apologised for what he'd done. "Sorry it had to be you," he said. "I'm a weirdo and a bastard. At least you won't have to go to school tomorrow. Police will want to know a lot of things." With that, he walked away. Then on December 6th, two sisters were returning to their home at Donvale in Melbourne's east. They'd been out shopping after work and spent the evening with family. We'll call the sisters Helena and Susan to protect their identity. Helena, aged 30, was driving, and as they swung into their driveway, something caught her eye. A Venetian blind moved slightly in the lounge room window at the front. Regardless, they continued inside. 17-year-old Susan went to the lounge room and found nothing. Helena went to the kitchen to put down some groceries and began walking down a hallway towards her bedroom. As she passed the laundry, she noticed movement. The intruder lunged at her, grabbing her around the neck. He was armed with a handgun. "Don't make a noise. I'm just a burglar," he said. He hid his face with a beanie pulled down over his eyes, and a scarf covered his mouth and nose. He made Helena summon her sister. Now he had them both captive. He took Susan to a bedroom and tied the 17-year-old to a bed. He then took her elder sister to another bedroom where he first bathed her and then raped her. He used words and language similar to the offender in Anthia's attack and from accounts of other attacks as well. He said, "Your safety depends on you not seeing me. If you see me, or I think you can see me, I'll have to hurt you. I'm going to wash you. I have a fetish about being clean before I do anything. I don't have AIDS or any other sexual diseases, so you won't catch anything. You can count to 1,000, but do it very slowly. I'm sorry it had to be you, but if you'd struggled, it would have been worse." Like Anthia's attacker, this man was calm and in control and followed a well-thought-out routine. The victims' physical descriptions of their respective offenders were not dissimilar, but most strikingly, both victims reported their attacker smelt very clean. As Anthia said, she remembered that soapy smell about him and still can to this day. Part of Mr. Cruel's legend was that he did not make mistakes. He was clever and calculating, planning his attacks minutely as he sought to fulfill his elaborate sexual fantasies. This was not always true. There were mistakes. On February 15, 1986, 21-year-old Sally, which is not her real name, was at home in Caulfield in Melbourne's east. It was a hot summer night and most of the doors and windows were open. Sally's boyfriend was out at a party. Sally stayed home. She wasn't friends with the hosts of the party and she wanted to watch a movie, The Big Sleep with Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. She watched the film alone and then watched another, then an overnight music video show. After midnight, Sally decided to get a pen and paper to sketch her wedding dress. She saw a figure in a balaclava lunge at her with a blanket. She screamed and he covered her mouth with a gloved hand. The offender claimed to be after money. He showed Sally a long-barreled handgun. "See this? See what I've got? I won't hesitate to use it," he warned. He told her he was going to tie her up and cover her eyes with strips of elastoplast. He led her out of the house to a car. He placed her in the passenger seat, and as they drove, Sally could make out her location through the bandages on her eyes. Street signs and other landmarks were visible. He replaced the strips of tape with cotton wool and more tape. He asked Sally if she could see, and she lied. No, she said, but he hadn't covered her left eye properly. Later, with the help of detectives, Sally was able to piece together the route they took. They drove away, and soon Sally could see a big green sign for Dandenong with an arrow to her left, and Morty Alec with an arrow straight ahead. She saw a sign for a Toyota dealership in Moorabbin. He turned off the main road. She couldn't tell if it was left or right. And she saw a sign for Warrigal Road, a busy arterial route that runs through Melbourne's eastern and southeastern suburbs to Port Phillip Bay at its southern end. As they passed under streetlights, Sally got a good look at the interior of the car, what she later described as a Toyota Corolla. The registration sticker was on the passenger side and was partly covered by a red and white sticker and perhaps a blue kid's soft toy, a fish or a whale. Sally could see the radio aerial was halfway down on the passenger side. The passenger door was coloured red with fawn trim. She was sitting upright in the seat, but he pushed her head down at traffic lights and when other cars came near. He wasn't wearing a balaclava, and she caught glimpses of him. He appeared to be driving aimlessly on and off main roads and side streets. At one stage, he even turned onto the wrong side of the road into oncoming traffic, forcing him to quickly correct and turn around. In one street, she heard people's voices and saw a Ford pickup parked on her left. There was a girl in the car who looked directly at Sally as they passed. She turned, hoping the girl would see the bandages on her eyes. The offender then tried to disorient Sally, pulling into driveways of vacant homes or homes under construction, then reversing out. Her description sounded similar to the area Anthia had been taken to, where houses were under construction. He finally returned to the first driveway they'd been to. The location turned out to be a vacant Housing Commission home on Embankment Drive, Chelsea. He stopped the car, got out, and came to her side. Sally had already unfastened the seatbelt, ready to flee if she had an opportunity. He leaned across her, and she could see he was wearing glasses and had a reddish-brown beard that was thick and bushy. He took Sally into the rear of a property and told her to sit down while he tried to force a window. Sally saw him shining a torch in the window, and she could see he was tall and wearing loose-fitting jeans. After trying to gain access for about 5 minutes, the offender gave up and took his captive back to the car. They drove a short distance and stopped again. He helped Sally from the car again. He walked her into the driveway of a double-storey house with a garage. She could feel the shape of his firearm on his hip against her. Cars were passing, and the man was forced to hide with Sally behind trees. He was becoming frustrated. "Fuck it, don't these people ever go home?" he said. He then led Sally over grass onto a gravel path, possibly towards a beach. He laid a blanket down between some trees and placed a hand on each of her shoulders. "You know what I brought you here for, don't you?" he said. Sally began crying, expecting she was going to be raped. "Just shut up," he said. "It's just going to be straight sex, no kinky stuff. I'm going to do it whether you like it or not. I'm not going to hurt you." Then Sally asked, "Then are you going to let me go?" "Yeah, I'll take you and drop you off at a police station." "What's the point of all that?" Sally asked. "I'm a madman. This is the way I get my kicks," he said. Stalling for time, Sally said she needed to go to the toilet. He agreed and she squatted down. He was standing just over a metre in front of her. She could see him unbutton his trousers and open the zip as he kept watch over her. "I can't do anything while you're watching," Sally complained. "It's all right, I won't watch," he said, averting his eyes. That was all the break that Sally needed. She jumped up and ran, tearing at the bandages over her eyes and screaming, "Somebody help me, somebody help me." She made a dash from the road and could see from the corner of her eye that he was chasing her, but he was dropping back. She heard him call out, "Stupid bitch," and he gave up the pursuit. Sally raised the alarm at a nearby house. Coincidentally, the residents were the parents of Edwin John Eastwood, the Faraday kidnapper, who'd taken 6 pupils and a teacher hostage at a tiny rural school in 1972. Now, ironically, the Eastwoods helped to deliver another hostage to safety. This was a narrow escape. Sally believed that her captor would not have hesitated to kill her. Such was his fear of being identified. His plan had unravelled when he failed to break into a house. He'd taken her to a poor location, a nature reserve on the Chelsea foreshore, bordered by numerous homes, and there were witnesses. A resident told police that at 3:15 a.m, she'd heard a girl screaming and saw a man walk from the reserve to Thames Promenade. Another witness heard the screaming and saw a man of solid build of about 5'9" to 5'10" in the same area. He was holding something in his left hand and started up a small, older type car the witness believed to be coloured red. He'd made more mistakes at the crime scene. Police found cotton wool and tape in the reserve. There was also a footprint located in some sandy soil. Another 5 months passed before the next attack. This time it was in East Brighton, not far from Hampton, where Anthia was abducted 15 months earlier. 24-year-old Rihanna, not her real name, was taking a walk at 8:45 p.m, as she had 6 times since recently moving back into her parents' home in the middle-class suburb. The route she took was becoming a habit. She walked west along South Road, a busy, well-lit dual carriageway. She passed a school, Hallaberry College, and a couple of houses later, she saw a man coming out of a driveway of one of the homes. The man accosted her from behind, placing his left hand over Rihanna's mouth. Don't scream, I don't want to hurt you," he said. Rihanna tried to look at him. Don't look at me, keep your head down, put your arm around me," he said. He wore leather or vinyl gloves and had a scarf pulled up over his nose and mouth. "I've got a knife and I've got a gun in my other pocket. Look, it's in my pocket. Feel it," he said. If this was the same offender who'd failed in Chelsea, he was better prepared and organised this time. He covered Rihanna's eyes with material tape and led her to his car, which was parked in a back street. She was made to sit or crouch in the footwell of the passenger side. She could see nothing. He drove for what seemed like 90 minutes before parking. The offender walked Rihanna some distance through back streets before arriving at a house the man seemed very familiar with. They went to the rear and squeezed inside through an open sliding door. There was no bathing or washing of the victim in this case. Rihanna had her period at the time, but this did not dissuade him. He said he'd use a condom, that he didn't have any diseases. He didn't want to leave a trace. When it was over, Rihanna dressed and they left the house the same way they came in. She thought he closed and locked the sliding door and put a key under the mat. As they walked back to his vehicle, he told her he'd take her to a taxi cab. He washed a $10 note under a tap and gave it to her. "No fingerprints," he said. "Do you know what you've done?" Rihanna asked him. "What were you doing on the street anyway?" he retorted. "Nothing worse can happen to you now. Start your life again," he told her. He said he would release her at Moorabbin police station, near to where his car was parked. The car they were in was stolen, he said. Then he changed his mind, saying Moorabbin police wouldn't be open, so he would find another station that would be. This turned out to be Springvale Station. Sally gave a good description of the offender. An Australian male, not very well spoken. He used slang words. He was 30 to 40 years old, 5'7" to 5'8", with a medium build with a small pot belly. He had straight sandy brown hair receding on the top. The Hampton rapist is believed to have been the perpetrator in most of these cases, but there could have been more than one offender involved. These offences were linked in media reports to Mr. Cruel, despite the fact that there were significant differences in the later cases, which involved children from the ages of 10 to 14 years. The victims of the Hampton rapes varied from 14 years to 31, and the average age was 21 years. This looked more like a situational offender, an opportunist without a specific preference for age or even gender. At least twice, he'd taken his victims off the street, selecting from a small group of potential targets to satisfy his vile sexual desires. There was a random quality to these street attacks. "Sorry it had to be you," he said to Brandon, the 14-year-old boy. There was an 11-month pause after the last of these Hampton attacks. What came next seemed to be more targeted, better prepared, and all the victims were children. Next in creating Mr. Cruel, the task force eliminates cases from the investigation and doubts emerge over critical conclusions.
Certainly my crew approached the whole investigation from the perspective of what does the evidence say about which crimes? And we identified that certainly 3 of those crimes, in our opinion, were the same offender.
A Podjay production.
The following podcast deals with sexual exploitation and violence against children. Listener discretion is advised. This is also an ongoing investigation, so if you have information, please contact Crime Stoppers on 1800 333 000 or get in touch with me at adamshandwriter@gmail.com. Welcome to episode 3 of Creating Mr. Cruel. I'm your host, Adam Shand. On May 5, 1992, Spectrum Task Force detectives and other police attended an all-day seminar at Victoria Police's St Kilda Road headquarters. It was a crash course in child sex abuse. 3 weeks earlier, the remains of Carmen Chan had been discovered. Mr. Cruel, Melbourne's serial abductor and rapist, was now a murderer. As fear gripped Melbourne, the public demanded results, and Chief Commissioner Kel Glare threw everything at catching Mr. Cruel.
We really needed a group of detectives who had some skills, because allegation of rape's easy to make and sometimes difficult to prove one way or the other. But of course, the ones I'm talking about were violent rapes, where the offending was clear and there was no question. And I had a view that they were really being dealt with on an ad hoc basis, and that really wasn't good enough. The victims deserve better.
Spectrum would become the most expensive investigation in the state's history. Victoria Police reached out to the FBI in the United States for help. Special Agent Ken Lanning from the Bureau's Behavioural Science Unit at Quantico, Virginia, flew to Melbourne to help police create a profile of Mr. Cruel.
It is imperative that the material publicly focuses on dispelling the myth of the monster. Citizens have a misconception regarding child molesters in general, believing them to be stereotyped monsters, men with raincoats, dishevelled appearances, etc. The public need to be educated as to the true characteristics and appearance of the offender.
The suspect was an everyday citizen, not a monster, which was exactly how some senior police had already portrayed him.
We're dealing with a very cunning person, a person who we regard as very dangerous and an unknown potential. Some describe him as a monster, and I think that's probably accurate.
Lanning was briefed on 6 abductions of girls aged from 10 to 14 years. The brief and general advice he gave was used to create a profile of Mr. Cruel, which is still in use today. Lanning said it was highly probable the offender worked at a school or had a connection to education, sport or youth-oriented activities. Those who knew the offender would believe he was genuinely dedicated to helping children and would therefore not be currently under suspicion. Lanning stressed the importance of words and definitions to the investigation. To dehumanise this offender would not help to catch him.
Before you, as investigators, deal with situations of child abuse,
it is very important to define exactly what is meant. The exaggeration and misuse of words and the importance of definition cannot be overstated. In the offender's mind, there is no intent to harm the children. The incidents are sexually motivated and represent the culmination of psychosocial factors unique to the offender. He has a rich fantasy life.
Lanning said the offender did not plan to hurt children, but a child molester of any type could become violent and murder to protect his identity. The biggest problem was the Mr. Cruel tag. While the offences against these women were heinous, they were not cruel in their execution, once the victim had submitted to his control.
I think we created Mr. Cruel, but when I say we, the conglomerate of people involved in this crime. Media, the legal fraternity, the police themselves. Because at the end of the day, much of the behaviour of this man as we know it is not cruel. The essence of why the child is there, of course it's cruel. And the crime is cruel. But the way these children were treated, a very strong argument could be made that he wasn't treating them in a cruel fashion.
The Mr. Cruel name was in fact a misnomer. That name was initially connected to another offender altogether, a northern suburbs rapist who had been cruel and violent in his crimes. For a short time, this man had been included in the eastern suburbs investigations. It was proved he wasn't involved, but the nickname had stuck to the profile of the offender created by the FBI. Now that he had allegedly killed Carmen Chan, the misperception had proved to be chillingly accurate. The FBI advised the task force to look for patterns in the crimes. It was significant the attacks after the Hampton rapes were all in a specific age range, 10 years to 14 years. If this was one offender, they should be looking at suspects with a history of offences against young teens, rather than amongst all child molesters.
The offender has an intense interest in children, especially in the age range that he is assaulting. He will spend a great deal of time with these children in what appears to be a selfless dedication to the students.
Lanning said Mr. Cruel was strictly speaking not a pedophile under the FBI's definition.
The pedophile is an individual whose erotic images and fantasy are stimulated by children. He has recurrent intense sexual urges involving sexual activity with prepubescent children.
None of the case files Lanning reviewed involved victims who were prepubescent, aged 10 to 14 years. They were all young girls at different stages of early puberty. Despite the FBI's warnings about words and definitions, the image of the monster pedophile was seared in the public consciousness. During its investigation, Spectrum whittled down the 10 cases to just 4 they believe could be linked to one offender. These cases are known as the Mr. Cruel canon among the internet detectives who follow this case. Canon, in this sense, refers to the recognised works of a particular author. It's generally accepted that one man committed these crimes. Inside the task force, however, the reality was very different. Many were not fully convinced by the evidence. Detective Chris O'Connor would have created the prosecution brief if one man had been charged with all 4 of these offences.
I mean, there could be up to a dozen different offenders. We don't know. All I can say is that from a dispassionate criminal investigation perspective, my belief is that Nikki Linus and Sharon Wills were abducted by the same person. Anybody else is up for conjecture.
The first of these 4 attacks took place on Saturday, August 22nd, 1987. It was 4 a.m. The target was a family home in Lower Plenty in Melbourne's Outer East, a leafy middle-class street with homes set back from the road, shielded from the view of passers-by by shrubs and trees. He'd been in the area for a couple of hours or more. At 1:45 a.m, 2 teenage boys on bicycles had seen him walking towards the property. just a few hundred metres away from his goal, and they got a good look at him. He had no mask. The boys would give a good description to police. He must have known the risk of that and was undeterred. This was his moment. Mr. Cruel would have many faces, but few more calculating and confident than on this night. He created an elaborate fantasy in his mind, and he would live it out, down to the minute details that spoke to his twisted sexuality. He removed a small pane of glass from the lounge room window, big enough to enter the home. He worked stealthily and expertly. Police couldn't work out how he removed the glass, which was never recovered. Inside the home, a family was asleep. Mother, father in the main bedroom, 2 children, an 11-year-old girl and her 7-year-old brother were in separate bedrooms. The offender was well prepared for this. In his rape kit, he carried at least 4 sets of handcuffs, nylon cord, electrical tape and elastoplast. He went first to the main bedroom, where he awoke the father and mother. "Don't be a hero, don't try any heroics," he told them. He was armed with a handgun and kitchen knife. He forced the parents onto their stomachs and handcuffed their ankles to their hands. He went and woke the children and took them to the main bedroom. He told the family his motive was robbery. He uncuffed the parents and then restrained them and the boy with nylon cord. He tied the girl's hands with the cord and then gagged all the family members with electrical tape. He blindfolded the children and asked the girl her name. She gave it, but for some reason he called her Kate. We will call her Kate for legal reasons. He then asked about the father's clothing size. He thought he was about the same size. He needed clothes, a shower and some food. He demanded cash and a first aid kit. He cleared out a wardrobe and put the parents in there, covering them with a bed blanket. Then more seemingly random behaviour. He used the bedroom phone but did not connect a call. Then he went off to inspect the rest of the house. He returned to the main bedroom and made another call. This time getting through and making threats to an unknown party, using the term bozo in the conversation. He then shut and locked the wardrobe door, left the room and quickly returned with a portable radio, which he tuned to radio station 3KZ and turned up the volume. He then led Kate to the bathroom where he ran a warm bath. He made her brush her teeth, then undressed her. He kissed her on the lips and they both got in the bath. He tried unsuccessfully to have oral sex with Kate and then gave up. After the bath, the offender wanted to eat. He went to the kitchen and helped himself to cold lamb, biscuits, milk and orange juice. He led her to the lounge room where he raped her. It's not clear whether he used a condom. There were no biological exhibits recorded. Once he'd raped Kate, the offender went back to check on the rest of the family. He retied Kate's ankles and told her he was leaving. He told her to count to 100 before untying herself. She heard the front door close. Kate was able to describe the attacker in detail. He was 5'10" to 6 foot, slim to medium build. He was wearing a balaclava, but it had an open face with a strip of material added to conceal his eyes. She could see his hair. It was brown but with white spots. She thought he might have tried to disguise himself by applying talcum powder to his hair and eyebrows. She wasn't sure, but it didn't look right. He was in his mid-20s, uneducated with a gruff voice that sounded deep and possibly nervous. He was unshaven and had bad breath that smelt musty. He wore rubber gloves and apparently didn't use a condom. He was wearing blue jeans and a brown tweed jacket over a blue zip-up nylon waterproof jacket. He carried a dark blue or grey bag that was similar to a school library bag. The boys who'd seen the man at 1:45 before the raid gave police almost the exact same description. One of the youths underwent hypnosis, but no further information could be gleaned. 3 police task forces investigated this offence with no success. Initially, the offender was thought to be a local, and a list of suspects was compiled. Sex offenders and recent jail releases were looked at. As the investigation continued, other similar offences were reported in the area, which caused detectives to go off on tangents without closing off the previous avenues of inquiry. The sheer volume of these offences was daunting, with 18 recorded at this time. This led detectives to spend a lot of time identifying links between the victims and not on the evidence before them. In the end, no one was ever charged for this offence. The scene of the next attack was a small family home atop a hill in Ringwood in Melbourne's east. In the early hours of December 27, 1988, the modest weatherboard house was ablaze with light. 37-year-old Sharon Wills was working on a puzzle that his daughter Sharon had received for Christmas, a 280-piece jigsaw of an Alsatian dog. John and Sharon had worked on it that day, completing the borders. John had tried to sleep, but at 1 a.m, with his wife Julie fast asleep, he got up. He turned the lights on as he moved through the house, in the bathroom, the kitchen and the lounge. He moved quietly so he didn't wake up the 4 girls in their bunk beds. He turned on the TV and got into the puzzle. 2 hours later, at 3:30 a.m, John suddenly felt that someone was watching him. He looked up towards the glass sliding door that opened from the lounge room to the front porch. One of the slats of the Venetian blind over the door was broken. There was a gap wide enough for someone to peer into the room. John couldn't hear or see anything and went back to his puzzle. At 4:50 a.m, the puzzle was complete and John finally went back to bed. He turned off all the lights and the house was in complete darkness. 30 minutes later, John was dozing, still not quite asleep. He heard a noise like the sliding door being opened. It didn't register as anything sinister. The next thing John knew, the bedroom door burst open and there was a man standing in the doorway. His right hand was outstretched, pointing a handgun. The figure flicked on the light. John could see the man was wearing a balaclava with holes for his eyes, mouth and nose that were trimmed with red. "Don't say a word, don't make a sound," he warned. John's wife Julie started screaming. The man rushed to John's side of the bed and grabbed him by the chin and put the gun right between his eyes. "Tell her to shut up," he said. Julie went quiet. The man moved the gun and placed it against John's left temple, still holding his chin with the other hand. "You're not going to be a hero, are you?" "No," said John. He ordered John and Julie to turn over, face down on the bed, and he proceeded to tie their hands and feet. "Don't make any noise. If you do, I'll gag you both very tightly." He was calm and in control, well-spoken without a trace of an accent. "All I'm after is cash. Now where's your wallet?" he asked. John told him his wallet was on the bedside with $30 in it. "That's not enough for me," the man said. John told him there was a checkbook on the lounge room table. "Checks are no good to me," he said. "Where's your handbag?" he asked Julie. She thought it was in the lounge room. He went looking for it. John turned to Julie in shock. He couldn't believe this was happening to them. A few minutes later, the man returned. He couldn't find the purse. "Where did you say your purse was?" he asked, now with menace. "Either in the kitchen or the lounge room," Julie said. Julie asked his permission to say one thing. He agreed. "There's no money in the girls' room." With that, the man left the room. 10-year-old Sharon had been woken by her mother's screams, and she listened to what was unfolding. Her 3 sisters remained asleep in their bunk beds. Sharon heard a man's voice. She assumed it was her dad, but it didn't sound like him. The voice was hard, not yelling, but speaking very loudly. She couldn't make out the words. Perhaps someone had got in the house. She kept her eyes closed, half thinking this was her dad, the other half dreading who it might be. The bedroom door opened. Sharon opened her eyes just enough to see a flashlight beam and the shadow of a man entering. The light played around the room. In the bunk below, Sharon's sister was stirring, making sounds as if having a nightmare. The figure approached the bunk and Sharon shut her eyes. She heard a strangely soothing voice say to her sister, "It's all right, calm down, it's okay." Maybe this was Dad after all. Confused, Sharon kept her face to the wall, feigning sleep. He gently pulled her shoulder towards him and shone the light in her face. "Are you awake?" he asked. Sharon didn't respond. This was definitely not her father. The man left the room, closing the door, and she heard him say, "You're doing okay so far," in a calm and quiet voice. Within a minute or so, he returned to the girl's bedroom. Sharon heard him try to rouse her sisters, but he quickly moved to her. She felt a poke on her shoulder. "Are you awake?" Another poke. "Wake up!" This time in a tone that Sharon could not ignore. She rolled over and looked at him. She saw a mask and gloved hands. "Get down from the bunk," he said. "Okay," Sharon replied, and she climbed down. She stood in the bedroom as he went to the wardrobe and opened the doors. Sharon could see no gun or knife. He searched the contents, taking clothes off hangers, but only from the middle section where Sharon stored her clothes. He selected a tartan skirt and a pair of blue thongs. He closed the wardrobe and told Sharon to go to the lounge room, touching her on the arm to guide her there. She was only wearing a nightie. As they passed a coat stand in the hall, the man took her father's black and brown jacket and put it on Sharon. He left her standing in the darkened lounge room and went back to her parents for a short conversation. He came back to the lounge and began going through a basket of clothes on the floor. These clothes weren't owned by the Mills. Sharon's mum took in ironing for others. Yet the man took a keen interest, pulling garments from the basket and piling them on the floor. To Sharon, it seemed like he was looking for something in particular, and then seemed to find it. A summer-style shirt with blue stripes. He wrapped Sharon's skirt and blouse in the shirt, making a bundle. "Come on," he said, scooping Sharon up with his arms around her waist from behind. Sharon was small in stature, even for 10 years old, and he could easily lift her. He took her out through the sliding door and onto the porch where he put her down. The man's confusing behaviour frightened Sharon and she screamed. The man shoved a red rubber ball in Sharon's mouth to stop her cries. "Are you going to do it again?" he asked. "No," she said, and he removed the ball. He took some material and wound it roughly around Sharon's eyes until she could see nothing. He picked her up again and carried her down the stairs and onto the driveway. He asked Sharon's name and her age. She answered him truthfully. He told her not to worry. He wasn't going to hurt her. He walked quickly, half jogging, perhaps wary of being spotted by witnesses in the encroaching dawn. "I'm giving your mum and dad a ransom note, and I'll take you back when the bank opens tomorrow." No ransom note was ever received. At first, the man moved away from the house and then doubled back and took Sharon to a car parked in a nearby side street. He put her inside and made her sit on the floor and threw a blanket over her. She could not discern where he was taking her. He kept asking if she was all right. As they drove, Sharon's blindfold slipped. "Can you see?" he asked her. She replied truthfully that she could. He stopped the car and wound adhesive tape over the blindfold. After driving some distance, he pulled into a driveway up a slight incline. He took her into a house and put her on a bed. He ran a warm, shallow bath and then washed Sharon thoroughly with soap. Here was a Mr. Cruel signature, an obsession with washing his victims, the awareness of forensic procedures. He carried her back to the bedroom and stood her on the floor and left the room. The radio was on 3TT and she heard the 7 o'clock news. An armed man had got into a house in Ringwood, her house, and tied up her parents. There was no mention of her or the abduction. He returned to the bedroom and said Sharon would soon be on the news. She replied that she already had. He put her on the bed. This was the moment to fulfill his sick fantasy of sex with this child. She was powerless to resist and compliant for fear of her life. Yet this moment would prove anticlimactic. For most of it, he failed to maintain an erection, resorting to masturbation to achieve an orgasm. At this moment of inadequacy and shame, he made a critical mistake. He didn't use a condom. Mercifully, the attack was short-lived and he left Sharon in the bedroom. She could hear him walking around the house. He kept coming in and asking if she was okay. He gave her a Vegemite sandwich on very stale bread and some milk. He stood over her as she consumed them. He then told Sharon he was leaving the house for a while and wrapped what felt like an electrical cord around her neck. There was a metal loop on the cord. He padlocked this loop to another cord that was attached to something by the bed. It was stretched tight so that Sharon could barely move, let alone get off the bed. She heard him go out a door. There was no sound of a car starting up. A radio was playing in the bedroom. She couldn't be sure if he'd actually left the property. Sharon carefully lifted her blindfold a little, peeling the tape upwards from above her nose. With her head tilted back, she could see her surroundings. Later, she gave detectives a detailed description of the room. She was lying on a double bed. It had a peachy coloured bedhead, possibly made of leather. At the right of the bed, there was a chest of drawers, brown or black, a bedside table with a peachy orange base and a yellow shade. Further right, there was a big window with peachy orange curtains. Sharon thought she could see a tree outside, but she wasn't sure. Towards the end of the bed, on the right, there was something else. An object that Sharon couldn't quite make out. It was taller than her and had 3 wooden legs going into a wooden pole. At the top, there was a black thing that could have been a camera. As she told police, she hadn't taken much notice of it. There was a blanket that was folded up leaning against the wooden object. It was dark coloured with lots of different coloured squares. This evidence would lead police down the rabbit hole of amateur child pornography rings for years to come, even though Sharon was never sure that she'd actually seen a camera and tripod. This was a nice room she was in. Someone had gone to trouble to coordinate the decor in peach, pink and orange colours. It seemed like he lived here alone. She pulled the tape back over her eyes and waited for him. After a while, she called out, "Mister," to see if he was around. No answer. She called out 5 or 6 times before he walked back into the room. "Yes," he asked. "I just wanted to know you were here," Sharon said. Perhaps he'd been there the whole time, silently listening to his captive. He checked her bonds, and then she heard him walking around the room. There was something different about him only after the sexual assault, the yucky things as Sharon called it. It was a smell, a terrible smell that seemed only to be on him and in the bedroom. It wasn't cigarette smoke her dad smoked. This was something she had never smelt before. As the hours wore on, Sharon remained tethered by her neck to the bed. "I want another bath," she told him eventually. "I feel all yucky," she said. At her request, he ran another bath for her. She bathed, and then he carried her to the lounge room where, fully clothed, he attempted oral sex on Sharon. She told him she didn't like it. "Just a bit longer," he said, and stopped soon after. He offered her a choice. She could get in the bed or have another bath. She opted for the bath. After the bath, he returned her to the bedroom, refixing the padlock and tether. Hours passed with little or no contact between them. Occasionally, he would come in and ask her if she was okay, or offer a drink to her, or to take her to the toilet. She asked him if he was going to take her home. "Yes," he said. "I'm going to put you in garbage bags so that no one will see you. I'll drop you home after it's dark." This was comforting, but she was still very scared. A few hours later, he told her she was going to have a shower and carried her to the bathroom. She was ordered to wash herself thoroughly, including her hair. He stood outside the shower and supervised. When she finished, he told her to step out into the garbage bag. As she did, he put a shirt on her and told her to do up the buttons. This scene is one of the most hotly disputed of the Mr. Cruel story, especially amongst internet sleuths. One camp maintains the offender wrapped Sharon in garbage bags and the other is equally certain it was a shirt. I can reveal that it was in fact both. The shirt came down past her knees and the short sleeves past her elbows. He pulled the garbage bag up to her neck and ran adhesive tape around her shoulders. This made the bag stay up by itself. He then put another garbage bag over her head down to her waist. There was a hole in the bag for her nose and mouth. He taped it tight around her waist. He carried Sharon out of the house and to a car. Still blindfolded, she was placed in the footwell of the front passenger seat. He turned the ignition over, but at first the car wouldn't start. Stolen cars don't always start properly, he said, but eventually it did. It was a long drive, much further than the outward journey. Sharon was frightened but trusted him to release her. Apart from the sex, the yucky things he'd done, as she called them, the man had been okay to her, she told police later, and she could take him at his word. Dialogue with him had been minimal. He only spoke to Sharon when he asked her a question or gave directions, and never called her by name. She was getting uncomfortable on the floor. Her feet felt numb and sore. "When are we going to be there?" she asked him several times. "Soon," he replied coolly. Finally, he stopped and lifted Sharon out of the car. He carried her a short distance and set her down. "When I take the blindfold off, look straight ahead. There'll be a house with a light on. Turn right there and climb over a fence. Then walk straight down to the end and there'll be a food plus store." He then pulled off the garbage bags, leaving Sharon wearing just the shirt and barefooted. Standing behind her, he took off the blindfold. "Don't look back or I'll come back and get you again. You don't want that, do you?" he said. Then he was gone. She was standing in a shed on a concrete floor in the grounds of Bayswater High School. She started walking, following the orders he'd given her. A van came round the corner and the female driver stopped to pick her up. The ordeal was over. Police took Sharon to hospital, where she was reunited with her parents after 18 hours. Every crook makes mistakes, even Mr. Cruel, and the man who abducted Sharon Wills was no exception. Over the 18 hours of her confinement, Sharon bathed 4 times, twice at her request and twice at his. He must have been confident he'd left no clues. He was wrong. He'd left a biological marker, a tiny amount of his semen, which was recovered in a groin swab. After all the bathing, he dressed her in the shirt and wrapped her in garbage bags. He took the bags with him, but he'd left her wearing the shirt for her release, and that yielded more significant evidence. Police found a light brown human hair and some animal hairs in the pocket. If this were today, the semen and the hair would be enough to swiftly identify the culprit. This was 1988. A rape case had yet to be solved through a DNA match in Victoria, and there was no offender database to match the samples against. But soon evidence like that would be putting rapists behind bars. If one day it could be matched to another case in the Mr. Cruel spree, many questions would be answered, and the cops might eventually get their man. It was literally the most important evidence in the entire investigation. In the next episode of Creating Mr. Cruel, the offender's crimes escalate. We look in detail at the abduction of Nikki Linus, and an insider takes us into the manhunt.
We used to talk in the pub after work. Were we chasing the right bloke? The evidence just didn't seem to match up.